So many moms feel stuck and isolated, like they've got to keep it all together and can't say how hard it really is. On Let's Get Real, we talk about the real stuff, motherhood, mental health, and everything in between, so you don't feel like you have to carry it alone anymore. Because in order to heal, we have to get real. If you're feeling overwhelmed, grab the Overwhelmed Mom's Guide. It's totally free and made to help you feel like yourself again. The link is in the show notes. Let's jump in. Motherhood is often described as beautiful, sacred, and life-changing. But for some women, it's also marked by trauma, loss, and grief that they never imagined carrying. And when that grief enters the story, it changes everything. Many women are left asking, how do I keep showing up when my heart is broken? And how do I hold both joy and sorrow at the same time? Today, we're joined by Val Kleppen, a speaker, storyteller, and mother who brings honesty and depth to conversations about motherhood, faith, and loss. Val's journey includes a premature NICU birth, the devastating loss of a full-term stillbirth, and another traumatic early delivery, experiences that reshaped her understanding of motherhood completely. Through grief, healing, and tested faith, she now supports other parents navigating loss while continuing to grow in her own calling as a mother, homeschooler, and advocate for honest conversations. Val, thank you so much for being here today. I am grateful for your willingness to share your story and get to speak on this subject of motherhood and what it looks like when we experience loss and the process of moving through that. And I just know you're going to bring a lot of hope to other moms listening. So thank you for being here.
Jenna, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation, as tough and heavy as it can be. I think you're right. It does need to be shared and processed through.
Yes, agreed. Well, can you take us back to the beginning of your motherhood journey? What were those early experiences like for you?
Yeah, I'm a planner and I like things to go according to plan. And that did not happen at all. And for my first pregnancy, she was delivered emergency cesarean, 32 weeks. So she was 2 months premature. I had HELP syndrome, which means that my organs were shutting down essentially, and my liver platelets were out of control. I was in complete renal failure, actually. And whoa. I remember I just felt I had the flu, and then it just got progressively worse. But after delivery and everything was safe, I remember my OB coming in and patting me on the knee and saying, "You were very, very sick." And my husband was like, "Did she almost die?" And the OB kind of looked at him and just patted me again and said, "We had to take care of you emergently."
Wow.
We had no idea at the time, and just rushed back into surgery. And so here we have this tiny 2-pound, 12-ounce baby who spent the first 30 days in the NICU. And I was going to the NICU several times a day. I was a milk machine, pumping every opportunity. And I remember, Jenna, one day scrubbing in to the NICU, and the neonatologist came in and stopped and looked at me, and he said, "You are such a good mom. Every time I'm here, you're here." And I remember that puffed me up a little bit, but I would have given anything to just have her home and not have to go to the NICU all these times a day and recovering from major surgery and all of that. So she was always a big girl in a little girl's body, and we brought her home. She just turned 16.
Oh my gosh, that is crazy.
Yeah, and it is because even though it was 16 years ago, the things that I remember and recall, like, they just feel so near. And it's hard on one hand to watch your kids grow up, but at the same time, you're like, this is exactly what we're supposed to do. And it's so amazing. And so about 3 years later, I got pregnant a second time. And also, I would like to say, in my husband's family, my daughter was the first girl to be born since the 1930s.
Oh my gosh.
Everyone kept saying, like, "Oh, you're going to have a boy, you're going to have a boy." And I had a girl, and it was so incredible. Everybody was surprised. And then I got pregnant again and went in. I remember I told my husband right before leaving for a Bible study, I'm pregnant. And he said, "Okay, let's pray about it." And I went to Bible study that morning, Jenna, and one of the girls in Bible study with me was going through a miscarriage. And she called me later that morning and asked if I would come and sit with her. And I had no idea. I went, of course, immediately went to her house and had no idea that that would be the first of many times that I would sit alongside a bereaved mother. And certainly had no idea that the baby I was carrying that day that I found out would be my ticket into bereaved motherhood. And I was high risk because of my first pregnancy, but they had told me until or unless you present high risk symptoms, we're just going to treat you normally. You know, we'll have the checkups. And so I remember my 36-week appointment. It was not my OB. It was someone I had never seen before. Everything checked out normal, but I remember thinking, because her heart rate was in the 140s, which wasn't normal for her. Normal was upper 150s. And I was going to ask about it, but it wasn't my OB, and I just wanted to get out of there. And so I didn't ask about it. And that was the last time I heard her heartbeat. And a week later, 37 weeks. So making it to 37 weeks was a huge deal for me because our oldest had been 32 weeks. Also, spoilers, she was another girl, so lightning struck twice for us. And at 37 weeks, I went into labor. I felt her kicking me that morning, and just the contractions were exciting for me, but because I had not experienced that the first time. And so I was experiencing all of these things I hadn't experienced with our oldest, and they were getting more and more intense, but they weren't getting closer together. They were so sporadic with 18 minutes, 2 minutes, 11 minutes, just all over the place. And finally that evening, or that night, we dropped our daughter off with some friends of ours and went to the hospital, and they confirmed with ultrasound. We'll never forget the doctor saying, "I'm so sorry, there is no heartbeat." And I remember the look of devastation on my husband's face when he turned and looked at me when she said that. But I was so confused, Jenna. I was laying there thinking, like, she just kicked me this morning. Like, how are you going to get her heart started again? Like, I'm in labor. Yeah. Babies don't die. Like, you're not telling me my baby is dead. I don't understand. And it took me a while. Plus, I was still very much in labor at the time, too. So the physical pain and the mental toll were just colliding. And they were going to prep me for surgery, and then my water broke. And they checked me and they said, the words they used were, "You're complete," meaning I was fully dilated. But as it was setting in what was happening, I thought, I'm anything but complete. And so they wheeled me just across the hall. I was in triage. They wheeled me to the delivery room. And 4 contractions later, I pushed her out. And the silence in that room was so deafening. And I remember so much about it. But I remember thinking, like, what are we going to tell our daughter? My belly, she would talk to her baby sister, and now that's not going to happen. What are we going to say? And of course, there were so many decisions that needed to be made, people who needed to be contacted. And it was just like our world completely turned on its head. But everyone else's kept going. And to reconcile that and to try to continue to move forward in a world that didn't feel familiar anymore was so, so challenging.
Oh, yes. To be in the place of shock and it really not making sense, because we, like, just knowing, like, this is not at all how it's supposed to be. This was not part of the plan. And having everything flipped on its head and just then being left to navigate and figure out even just the next steps, let alone your way through the following months and years. It's such no one and nothing prepares you for that. And there's nothing in us that wants to be prepared for that either.
And it's one of the most interesting parts of my story. I feel like 13 years later, I don't know what to think about this, but I was about 7 months pregnant with Harlan, and at work one day, and a coworker came in my office, and we were just talking like we always did. And he said, "Oh, I meant to tell you, my wife went to the Y this morning, or the day before, I think maybe it was. And she had seen this little boy there, and she knew that this little boy's mom was pregnant. And so she asked the little boy, like, hey, how's the baby? How's your mom?" And the little boy said, "The baby died."
Oh.
And I remember when he told me this story, looking at him going, can you imagine going through your whole pregnancy just to have your baby die?
Right.
And he's like, no, I can't imagine that. And I was like, oh, I feel so bad for her. Mm-hmm. And then 6, 7, 8 weeks later, that was exactly what happened to us. And I remember, like, I could not emotionally reconcile how that could happen to someone and how they would navigate it afterward. And we were talking about it, and I was 7 months pregnant. I could not even entertain the possibility that it could also be my story. And so then when it was, I've thought about that so many times. Like, was that a little preparatory window? I'm not sure I believe in coincidences. And so, like, was that just to plant the seed that you are not alone? You will not be alone, and it is possible to move forward after this. I don't know, but I think about it all the time.
Right. Because, again, just like even coming back to being like, there's no way of preparing, like our brains can't even get to that place because we are made to live. But then to have a story like that come in, where it's like just having that question of what was that? Was that some form of preparation for the devastation that nobody should ever go through? With each of my kids, because I have had a friend in particular, a couple of friends that have given birth to a stillborn child and experienced that loss. And it's something too, even in my great grandmother, she had a bunch of kids. One of them was a stillborn. But after giving birth to each of my kids, I remember I would sit in that hospital and I was like, this would be devastating in this place to be like, it's just thinking of hormonally what happens, the change our body goes through. We have our own diaper that we're in, we're having to, and to not be able to hold the baby of like, that is why we went in. That is such a dark place to be. And it is the sad reality that many women do go through, but that feeling of aloneness is what I think creates the deeper ache. Mm-hmm. And so that's part of what I really do appreciate with you sharing your story, because I wish that it wasn't so, that nobody had to go through this. And unfortunately that we live in this place where plenty of women do. Yeah. And just being reminded that they're not the only ones, that you yourself have been through this, that there are other women, and just having that space to be able to share, to be honest, to say how deeply that hurts, like the ache and the void is so deep, you can't even have words for that. I have thought about that, the duration that I was in the hospital, just like, my gosh, I cannot imagine. So
yeah, it is unimaginable, even still, having lived through it, to try to recount what it was that we experienced and just the many, many things afterward. The different nurses and the doctor coming in my room and just cupping my face in her hands. And the sounds, the smells, like everything is stored and tucked away. And at the same time, a lot of it feels like, did we really? Did we really go through that? Did that actually happen? How is that possible? And so it's a wrestle, even all these years later, it's a wrestle. I remember, so I delivered her at 16 minutes after midnight. It was pitch black outside, and it was on a Wednesday. And so that morning when it got light, there were huge snowflakes falling outside. And I just remember thinking, like, those are frozen angel tears. The angels are crying with us. And I don't know if this sounds hokey or not, but it's what I experienced, and I stand by it. But I felt the Lord in the room weeping with us. And he was just sitting by my head. And it brought me so much comfort. And I know he counts our tears. And it was a surreal experience. Later, it was a little seed of bitterness for me that I had to reevaluate and come back to. But just those, if you look back on the darkest road we have ever walked, and now to see these beautiful things that have come from it, like, I would give anything to have her here. I would give anything to not have walked that road. But also, even and especially because we walked that road, so many people we met that we never would have met otherwise have so richly blessed our lives. So many people that I have come in contact with and heard their stories and sat with them in their grief. I mean, these are blessings that I don't take lightly or take for granted either.
Yes. And I mean, I'm so glad you shared that experience that you had with God being there in the hospital with you. I don't think that sounds hokey by any means. It's just this reminder that it's so powerful to get to experience God in a very real way like that, like where he does show up in the way that we need, and it's unique to each person. And in that, in your darkest hour, to experience him with you and weeping and the sadness that he felt too, it's just incredible to get to experience. As well as I appreciate your honesty of saying there was bitterness too, because one of the questions that I was going to ask you is what that was like for you to grieve with God. So if you don't mind expanding a little bit more, because grief is such a process and it's ever unfolding. And I feel like we get surprised by it at different stages in our life too, where we're like, whoa, there's more to grieve here. So I'm curious what that looked like for you to grieve with God, where you could be honest with him and tell him whatever it was that you were feeling. So if you don't mind expanding, I would love to hear more.
Yeah. Initially, he was the only one strong enough to carry me and my grief. I mean, just the weight alone. And my husband was and is wonderful and supportive, but he needed support also. And in that, there was support that he probably wanted to give me, but just wasn't capable of. And so I really collapsed, I think, just at the feet of the Lord. And he just let me stay there. And there's a verse in Psalm 139 where it says, you hem me in behind and before. And I just pictured him with his hands, on either side of me as I'm collapsed before him. And he's just holding me and just letting me wrestle it out. That was one thing that was, I guess I'll say, frustrating, was everyone wants to help in some way, right? And God bless him for it, but maybe not everybody is capable of helping in the way that you need it. And so I would get blog posts forwarded to me that were written by other stillbirth moms or other lost moms. And to me, they seemed so polished and so removed from the moment. It was, I had a bad day a couple weeks ago and I didn't want to write a post because I didn't want to discourage anybody. And I'm like, I need to know exactly what those bad days were like for you so that I can know and believe I'm not psycho.
Yes,
right now.
1000%.
And
remember, you're human.
Yes. And I wasn't getting that from anyone. And even the scripture verses was always just about positivity and hope and encouragement. And I was just like, okay, but there's also verses that talk about how singing someone a greeting in the morning is a curse.
Yeah. Let's not forget that one.
Yeah. And there are verses that talk about exactly what I'm experiencing, but no one wanted to feed me those. They were just like, it'll be okay. It'll get better. And maybe it will, I thought, in the moment. However, it's not okay right now. And I just need permission from someone, anyone, please, to grieve messy. because I can't hold myself together. I can't function. I was living on coffee and sunflower seeds like for weeks, and only because that was easy. I didn't have to prepare anything. And it was so, we talk about the story of Jesus in the boat calming the waves and the winds, but I very much know what that storm felt like before he spoke. And I was tossed around, and I tethered myself to him, Jenna, selfishly because I wanted to see my daughter again.
Oh.
And I wasn't, like, there was no one to blame. We didn't know what happened, and so I needed to throw my blame somewhere.
Yes.
And it came to a point where I was like, Lord, I felt you in that room weeping with us. But weren't you the one? Weren't you the one who could have changed this? Wouldn't you have rather been celebrating with us? And so I pinned the blame somewhere, and that happened to be on him. And so I tethered myself, and I don't know if this makes sense, but it was like I was too vulnerable to allow myself to feel so vulnerable. It just felt like I was doubly exposed. And so I knew that he was God, that he had my daughter. I knew that he was good. I knew all of the miracles he'd done in my life prior to that. But all I could see through was the lens of my pain and my grief. And it changed how I saw everything. And so it was months of wrestling. I would go to church. I longed to feel close to him, but also I was so upset because I felt like I had never been closer to you than before she died. Like, was it me? Was it something, am I not good enough? All of these things. And finally, I got a phone call from someone. This was months later, where, Jenna, my prayers were, God, why?
Yeah.
God, why? And that was all I could pray. And I thought, at least I'm talking to him, and if that's what I have to do. And I was the one who was posting those blog posts in the moment then, since no one would send them to me.
I will create them. Okay.
Yeah, this is what I'm feeling right now. This is how my day was. And I would get feedback from people constantly, even people who hadn't lost a baby, who were like, I was going through stuff, and how you explained how you felt really resonated with me. And I just wanted someone to shepherd me, but also I wanted nobody to come around or talk to me or try to tell me what to do or anything. So months later, I get this phone call from someone who was quote unquote struggling with something. I say that because to me, having just buried my daughter, it was a very benign thing.
All right.
Not to say she wasn't actually struggling.
Yeah.
But she called me and she's like, I'm really struggling with this, and I know you're a prayer warrior, and I was hoping you would pray for me. And if I can be so bold and say this, I was pissed, livid, because I thought, your struggle is so benign, and you're calling me, telling me I'm a prayer warrior, when the only prayer I've uttered for months has been, God, why? And I did not know how to handle that phone call. But also, I didn't want to make a reputation for myself of someone who, I called her for prayer and she cussed me out.
Don't go to her.
Yeah. And so I remember just thinking, I've got to get her off the phone, so I have to say a real prayer. And that was the first, quote unquote, real prayer I had said in months. And I remember something shifted, and that yearning of just it was familiar. And I was like, that is a God I know, and I want to know him again. But I'm just so scared because I knew him so well, and the worst thing still happened. Not to say that if you know the Lord, you're not going to struggle. That's a verse we have on Harlan's headstone, John 16:33. In this world, you will have trouble. So it was a wrestle, and it wasn't, we had people telling us oh, you're so strong, you're maintaining your faith. And it wasn't necessarily because we wanted to, but we felt obliged to. And sometimes that shames me to say it, but also I'm grateful for that sense of obligation because it kept me tied to him.
Yeah.
And so my husband and I will both say we can't imagine anyone walking through this loss without faith, without an eternal hope. Cannot imagine it. That said, there were some very, when the Bible talks about the valley of the shadow of death, that valley is deep and that shadow is dark, and it's hard to find your way through it sometimes.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I so appreciate your honesty and sharing really what it was like to wrestle this out with God. And I think that word alone, just wrestling, and even I remember you said like I needed permission, because the pain that you went through is huge. Like that is massive, and a massive amount of pain. And too often, I think for whatever reason, there's a bunch of reasons, like we can get trapped into these beliefs and thinking like we need to apply some form of a formula, and somehow we get to just escape the pain, or God's going to like give us what we want, or we think I didn't have enough faith, so this is why this didn't happen. And then life happens and we don't know what to do with that. And so I feel like what you just expressed is it's what a lot of people think, it's what a lot of people feel and what they go through, but don't feel like they have the permission to say and be honest about.
In some cases, they don't dare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I can see how, I just think of like in the wrestling, like that, as hard as it is, and God's actually inviting us into that level of honesty with him, of like expressing our anger, of it saying how like just pissed off we are, or like just being as honest as we can, because it does lead to further closeness. And it's in ways we don't know how we can get there, or what the path looks like, or how that could even be possible. But I think the freedom to be honest with God, like as honest as we need to be, and especially in the middle of our grief, is significant. And it's significant to even just heal the fractures that we feel in that relationship with God, where even if we don't have the answers and we don't get to know why, like there are certain levels of healing that is possible, but it's not by denying this, and it's not by pretending, and it's not by over spiritualizing everything. It's actually through like gut level honesty with him.
Yeah. You said it beautifully. That was beautifully stated. And I have told so many bereaved parents time and time again, you will get through this, but the only way to the other side is right through that messy middle. You cannot go around it. You cannot go above or below it. You have to walk through it. And I think like that's where it feels the loneliest.
Yes.
You know, after we delivered her and we called people, like our hospital room, Jenna, was full of our church family. Our family started coming in. Friends started coming in. Everyone was there to support us. And then after the funeral, we were on our own. And that was the hardest part for me, because the finality of putting her in the ground and then going on without her, like at least in the beginning, I held her in the hospital room. I had to make plans for her funeral. Like I could parent her in those things, as awful as they were. I could still be her mother. After that, what am I doing?
Yes.
I'm on maternity leave with no baby. My milk is coming in. I have no one to give it to. Like all of these things, but everyone else has gone back to work, gone back to their schedule. And the people who were brave enough, because it was hard to partner with me in grief. Like I'll say that. And I wanted so badly to just be able to text someone and say, can you come sit with me on my sofa just while I cry? But then I would think like, but who would I text? Like who would come and do that? Who would just come and sit and not say anything? And I lamented, like, I wish I had Job's friends. As silly as the things they said, at least I came for 7 days and just sat.
Yes.
And I longed for that, but also I didn't know anyone who would do that for me. And so even though I had all of these contacts in my phone, I felt even further disconnected from all of them.
Right. I could see that. And it's so sad to have the reality, and being like, wait. And I was talking about this with somebody as far as how much we need to learn how to be able to create and hold space for people where we're not fixing, giving advice, where our presence is enough and we're able to really listen and let them say whatever it is that they want to say, as crazy as it may sound, without the judgment.
Yeah.
Because of how deeply needed and healing the presence of a human body is in the room. But we don't know how to do that. And then as Christians, it's just like, it upsets me so much because of how rare it is. Mm-hmm. And yet that alone is what's so healing. And we don't need another Bible verse. We don't need to hear an at least X, Y, and Z. None of that. But yet that is so often what we need. And yet we need to learn really how to do that for people. And a lot of times it's not until we go through it ourselves that then we're like, hold on. How can I want to be that for somebody else? And you realize how lonely it is and how few and far between it is, unless you can find a specific support group where that's like the purpose, which is great that they have that. But at the same time, like you said, I want to be able to be in my home on my sofa, have somebody just sit with me here.
Yeah.
If you could share, I'm curious about like those early days and the early process of what grieving looked like. Like, so coming home from the hospital and after the funeral, what did grief look like? Because you still had a 3-year-old at home that you were taking care of. And I think it's really difficult to figure out, like, how can I grieve while I am still having to take care of a child? Like, where is space for this?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, days before, she and I were having picnics on the living room floor, playing together, and then fast forward to after, where we're driving somewhere, maybe to get food or something, and from behind me in the car, I hear, "Mama, is your heart broken?" And even though I was holding it together in that moment, as soon as she said that, I just lost it. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot of that. It was a lot of, I don't want me falling apart to be who she remembers her mother being. But at the same time, I can't even pee by myself without her wanting to come right in. And so I couldn't really fall apart. And so she was still going to daycare at that time. And I'm so grateful, not just for me having space and freedom to be a mess, but so that she didn't have to see it constantly.
Yeah.
She could go and have fun and play, and it wasn't setting me off or anything like that. And so I'm so glad that she was still able to have a sense of normalcy in her life, because she understood but didn't. It was a lot. And I think for me, I told you when I started this, I like to I'm a planner. I like to have things planned out. And so to not even be able to function, to prepare food for my family or to know what we were having for a meal, especially once the meals people brought ran out. Like, again, I was never suicidal, but I had no desire to live. And I I didn't want to take my life, but I didn't want to make a life. I just wanted it. I wanted to close my eyes and just have them stay closed and not deal with it. And it was too much. And then on good days, I would feel bad for having good days. And on bad days, I would feel guilty that all I had was bad days. I mean, there was no winning whatsoever. And so when people would say things like, "Just let me know how I can help you." Well, I don't even know if I'm going to put socks on. Like, I can't let you know how you can help me. Can you bring my daughter back? You can't. And that's the help that I wanted in that time. And so I was just like angry. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to see anyone because the help that they were offering wasn't helpful at all. And nothing against them. Sweet, well-intentioned, caring, nurturing people. But it was nothing that I wanted, and I couldn't even articulate anything I needed. And so I carried a lot of guilt for a while about just not being emotionally present for my daughter, but also she's 16 now. We're so close. And the other day I said something like, it's my number one goal to prepare you to be as good a wife and a mom to your future family as you can be. And I don't want to fail you in that. And she's like, you are not failing me in that.
Oh.
And she's 16 and pretty straightforward. So I think I can take her at her word. So like just knowing now, I didn't have to feel guilty in those days, that I could still, she was getting too many hugs probably, because I would just hold her and just bawl while I was holding her. I would go in and pick her up while she was sleeping. And like, it was all out of love. And just as I didn't know how to grieve in that season, it just happened. I think it was the same with loving. I didn't know how to love anyone, myself included, in that season, but eventually it just happened.
Yeah, wow. And what I think, it is so incredibly hard to navigate, because we don't know naturally really how to do this, right? And then we also don't have like a blueprint for this, and it's unique, it's different for each person, and the way it's just so nuanced. And what I hear you saying, I think like in those early days with your daughter, and what I think is an odd gift to her, right, is the gift of her seeing what it looks like to, like, that this life is messy, and it's being a messy human, and where you didn't shield her completely from that. Yeah. And you also created the space where she can go play and have fun and be around other adults to love on her and care for her at that time, so you could figure out how to care for yourself and what that looked like. And just because I think it'd be that both and, where or like all or nothing, I guess, is more of what I'm thinking of. Like, oh, I can't let my children see me struggling. I can't let them see me crying. And then they grow up thinking we should not have to experience pain. And then they don't know how to grieve because they never saw it modeled for them. And grief is very messy. Again, it's not linear. It's all over the place. So it's a strange gift of giving her, I think, the reality that life, like, there are painful things that happen in life. Grief is how we move through it. And to have some of those memories, I would think she still has, like, of getting to see her mom be human, and not the pressure of like, I have to shield her from this and put on a face and pretend, because our kids sense it. They know. Even her asking you that precious, heartbreaking question of, is your heart broken, in the car? She was 3. That's like remarkable that she picked up on that. They feel it. They know. And just the how close you are with her now, it's really remarkable. And so, that's what I'm reflecting on as you were sharing that. I would love to hear, as you've moved through all these years, this life of like, I didn't choose this, I didn't plan for this, I wish this never happened. Part of grief is acceptance. So what have you found has helped you personally move towards acceptance? And what have you found has helped other people as you've walked with them through this?
I think to someone who hasn't been through it, this will sound counterintuitive. But to someone who has been through it, this might sound freeing. And the acceptance came in giving myself the freedom to grieve messy, to not hold it together. And once I could recognize and realize that these feelings were going to crop up, the anniversaries, the birthdays, all these things were going to send me somehow down this emotional roller coaster. I was allowed to work through them however I needed to. Every year it's different. I've never experienced the same thing twice, so I never know what it's going to be or look like. But just in knowing that it's going to happen that way and allowing myself to work through it however I need to, that's how the acceptance came. I can't change the fact that she is underground in Fargo, North Dakota. I would have done anything. I was ready to crawl into the ground with her at the funeral, but I can't do anything to change that. However, what I can do is be her voice. the voice that she never had. And she's very much still a part of our family. She would have had her 13th birthday this year. And the week before it, Jenna was one of the worst I've experienced in years. I took April 9th and April 10th off. April 9th is the day we learned her heart stopped beating. April 10th is the day I delivered her. I took those days off from work. Those days were beautiful this year. And we went bowling and we had fun and we talked about, well, I wonder what she would have looked like. I wonder how good of a bowler she would have been. Would she have picked a different activity for her 13th birthday? And we just had such a beautiful time together. And I was endeared in that. Whereas if I had not been bold enough or allowed to in any capacity walk through my grief on my own terms and my own timetable, who knows? I might still be bitter, resentful, or any of that. And I would much rather have a horrible situation that I have come to terms with today and can anticipate things and expect things than to have spent the last 13 years bitter and upset and angry, because that would have robbed me of so much more than what I lost when Harlan died.
Wow, yes. And I think it's so incredible. And I love what you just painted, that description of the honoring her and her birthday and getting to do the activities and ask those questions. It's just remarkable because I think so often it's when we experience such deep pain, we don't know what to do with it. And so we think that by talking about it, it will make it worse, almost where we think we're going to just be swallowed up by it. Mm-hmm. However, when we can let ourselves process through that, grieve it, talk about it, really we get to honor what was lost, who was lost, and it just shows how much they matter to us. Yeah. And these beautiful ways, these creative ways that we get to honor those people that we love and who we lost. And that's an incredible example that you just gave, which I think is very helpful to hear, because then we can, for anybody who has lost a child, it's almost like these markers that are tangible, and it's a way of we're remembering that person was real. She was real. She was part of our lives. There's this longing there and there's sadness, but we can honor this beautiful person that we love in creative ways like that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm grateful to have her still be a part of our family. My 12-year-old son never knew her, never met her, but he very much knows her. And I think that's important for all of us, him included. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yes. And to have her story continue on.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, Val, thank you so much for sharing your story and being here today. I really appreciate your willingness to open up and share and be as vulnerable as you have. I know it's going to help any other mom who has gone through this in ways that we can't even explain. So thank you.
Absolutely, Jenna.
And last thing I wanted to ask is, where can people connect with you to learn more, and just if they want to reach out?
Okay, so I also host a podcast. You can find it at the motherhoodexperience.com, where just other moms come and share their motherhood journey with me. We've had lost moms, we've had corporate career moms, work from home, homeschool moms, the whole spectrum of motherhood. And I just let them share their story over there. And so you can find me there. You can always email me, info@themotherhoodexperience.com. And even I just want to speak to the mom who maybe has experienced this and doesn't know what to do or who to turn to. You can always email me and say, I'm not sure I want you to reply, but I just want to share this. And I probably will reply, but I'll honor the boundaries that you set. But I think just knowing someone who understands the fact that we don't understand how to walk through this is really huge. And I just want to offer myself to be that person for someone if they need it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you are available for anybody who does need to reach out and just share and offload and be the reminder that they're not alone. They're not the only ones. Their story may be nuanced. However, that experiencing loss is real. And unfortunately, more moms have experienced that than I wish they did. So Thank you, Val. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And remember that you are not alone. Thank you so much for listening, friend. I cannot wait to talk with you next time. Thanks for listening to Let's Get Real. If you've been feeling stretched thin, stuck in survival mode, or like you've lost yourself in motherhood, I made something just for you. It's called the Overwhelmed Mom's Guide, and it's totally free. Inside, I walk you through simple steps to help you reconnect with who you are, find a bit more breathing room in your day, and start to feel like you again. You can grab it now. Just click the link in the show notes. You don't have to keep doing this alone. Let's take the next step together.